X along the $60 line there in the middle of the diagram. And we notice that there's a nice spike upwards right after it. But then, if we look back to the left, we see that the price has been trending upward for about 3 months anyway. So, did the Saturn station have anything to do with it? Not sure that it did. So, what we are doing here is not discarding traditional astrology, but we're dealing with it in a very impassionate, empirical fashion. Saying, does this work with this chart or not?
Should you look at the ruler of the chart?
Which in this case would be?
Okay, Mercury. Are you looking at Mercury as the ruler?
Well, if we've got Gemini on the ascendant of the first trade chart, Mercury is the natural ruler of automobiles, and we started out by looking at Mercury stations.
Okay. Would you say Mercury is the ruler of this chart?
All right.
Okay, and Mercury is placed in the 9th house?
In the 10th house,
10th
yeah.
house. Right. We're in the 10th already.
It's well aspected in that house, and it's in opposition to that powerful Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that we mentioned earlier.
Would that be
Certainly.
Big losses or big gains showing Jupiter and Pluto, especially?
Well, typically we would have a little more volatility of motion there. Big blocks of money moving. Okay. And Ford is widely held by institutions. It's when shares trade hands, it's often in big blocks of that stock. Uh-huh. It's not people just going out and picking up 100 shares here and there. I mean, many investors do, but it's there are hundreds of thousands of shares traded in a unit with this particular kind of stock.
But could you do that? I mean, as a factor in the market, I'm looking at individual stocks. Look at the ruler of the chart and see where it's located, see the aspects to it, and try to see.
I wouldn't hesitate to look at that.
In other words, you can really look at it any which way.
Exactly.
And some things will work, some won't.
And what I'm sharing with you in this study is what I found tends to work most consistently. Now, that doesn't mean I've looked at everything else. And quite honestly, I have not dealt with rulerships that extensively. The astrologer who wrote under the name of Raphael around the turn of the century had, let's see, I think it's in his book on the Law of Values.
Didn't he write the an ephemeris too? Didn't he do an ephemeris?
Yeah. But it's very interesting because he deals with a system that he outlines with planetary values, and let's see, how does he put it here? Because it's real intriguing. I'm trying to find if there's a place where it gets.
This doesn't have to do with trading, though. This has to do just with aspects.
Oh, he's talking about the impact on the effects of transits on stock market prices.
Oh, okay. And this
back
is
in 1900. Yeah,
century.
Right back in 1900, turn of the last century, okay? Yeah. And what he's doing is trying to relate the impact of aspects and transits to various countries. Because his whole assessment of the situation was that if you had a particular astrological dynamic at work, it would be more associated with India than it would be with England, and this one would pull in Russia, and this would do that, and these various countries represented certain broad economic trends, and this would impact various stocks, and it was a real wild kind of a system that he derived, and then it became a question of what was the ruling sign at the time, and would Saturn move through it before Jupiter would move through it, and so forth, and when I took time, and this is Safariel, I'm sorry, not Raphael, Safariel. I said Raphael, and he did the ephemeris, and you're right. And Safariel turned out several books about gambling and speculation and using astrology in the stock markets and speculation.